Hi, everybody. Welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness. I'm Cherie Burton, and this is episode 101. I've been doing this now for almost 2 years, every single week, and I just absolutely love it. So if you haven't gotten up to speed with, like if you're a new listener, go back and listen to some of our old epic ones. Like we have a 6-part Mary Magdalene series. You can find all the past episodes on any of your platforms that you're listening to for podcasts, or you can just go to my website and look at the podcast section. So my website is cherieburton.com. And while you're there, pick up my free multisensory healing kit. It's just a fun lookbook of lots of yummy multisensory nourishment on all levels of your mind, body, soul. Today, we're going to be talking about alignment over achievement. And this is, I said this in the show notes, but I'm basically a recovering workaholic. I prefer the term overachiever to workaholic, but nonetheless, I love producing. I love putting stuff out there for people to consume, mostly content, education, just my ideas. In that, I have to work not to work, if that makes sense at all. We talk a lot about feminine energy in this podcast. Part of the feminine is about coming back into flow and alignment and connecting back in, because you can't really produce anything of value if you're out of whack. And that doesn't mean you have to be perfect in that alignment. It just means you have to know what it feels like to be lined up in your own being. So I've got Denise Walsh today. She's a former clinical psychologist and has stepped away from that work to do her real heart and soul, which is starting her own business and becoming a mom-preneur, a busy mom. And you guys know I've had people on the podcast before that have talked about how they were doing this thing that they thought would be the right thing for them to do. Maybe it was in the corporate world, or they started on a career path and were successful, but realized it wasn't their thing that they were meant to do. And it takes so much courage to switch courses like that. But she did. So we're going to talk in this episode about how to fill up yourself kind of to overflowing or to the brim, so that you can give pieces of you to others, whether it's human, a purpose, or a business. It doesn't matter. She actually is offering a free dream board kit at dreamworkbook.com/dream board kit. Denise, thanks so much for agreeing to be on my show. I was on your show and I feel like we totally connected, and I was like, I want you to be on my show. So
yes. Thank you so much. Yeah, we had a great chat on my a few weeks ago, and I'm excited to chat again.
Yeah, and remind me the name of your show, because everything's literally a blur in my life right now.
My podcast is called The Dreamcast.
The Dreamcast, that's right. And that's kind of where we're going to go today, is because I know you do a lot of talk about, a lot of work around helping people to level up and to really get clear on their purpose and following their dream, really. I mean, as cliche as that sounds, it's like it's what you're all about, and it's what you're good at. I can just tell with your vibe and everything that you're so good at giving people permission to just really go after their dreams and to answer the call of their soul. So we'll go there. But first, I'm just super curious, and I know our listeners are going to want to hear a little bit about your journey and how you came into the space of going from being a clinical psychologist, working your butt off, to kind of taking a different path with your purpose. Do you want to explain to us how that morphed for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it certainly wasn't on my dream board. But I feel like because I continued to say yes to that next step and really felt into it, that I'm just so grateful that I did. So prior to becoming a clinical psychologist, I feel like I got into that career and chose that career path because of my days as a camp counselor. So I worked throughout the summers of college in Asheville, North Carolina, and then in New York City, New York, and worked with New York City foster kids. And throughout those seasons of service and really with those kids, I felt like they came to camp feeling lost and forgotten and often traumatized, and they really had their head down and their guard up. And throughout the weeks together, I saw them loosen up and have fun and laugh and see the stars for the first time and start to really come into their own. And I thought, man, this is what I want to do. I want to help people know just how awesome they are. Because these kids they didn't know how awesome they were. They felt beaten down and neglected often and things. And so that got me into the field of psychology. And that was the first time I felt my spark, and it's like, what you know, this is what you're supposed to do. And time goes by fast. You feel super excited and connected with what you're doing. And that doesn't mean there's not hard days, but it just means you know what you want and you know why you're doing it. Like I knew why I was at camp, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. I loved it. So I got my first job. I went to school, I got my master's, got my first job at a community mental health, and it was not the same. I felt like I was now working with people who didn't really want help. A lot of them were court ordered. I had really tough situations. My clients were in and out of jail, a lot of chronic and generational baggage, addictions, things like that. And that spark that I had to really impact people started to die. And I had this choice to make. Do I figure out a way to light that spark again? Or do I just let it die and become a zombie throughout the work week? And for years I did that. I lived for the weekends. I was not engaged. I would get up and do the motions, but not really be engaged with what I was doing.
And it's like you disassociate from yourself.
You do. You're just your body. You're like a shell. I feel like your body is going through it, but my heart wasn't in it. And to be honest, I know a lot of people who live like that, and who hate their job for decades, and that becomes, quote, normal. And so I was like, is that just being an adult hating your life?
Is that that was, to some degree, that was kind of what was modeled to a lot of us.
Well, and
just the clock in, clock out, do this,
Yeah. And I was talking to my dad about this after I wrote my book, Design Your Dream Life. He was one of my editors, and he said, this could really be called Dream Life Self-Discovery, because he said, nobody's asked me these questions before. When he was growing up, it was, how do I make sure there's food on the table? Not necessarily, how do I find something that lights me up, That's the beauty of the day and age we're living in now. We really have so many choices.
We do.
We have a lot more ways to make an income, and we truly can find something we love.
Yeah, my dad loved his job. He was a police officer, and I think it was hard on him. But when I look at my mom, I can see my mom was super entrepreneurial minded. We had 7 kids, and we didn't have a lot of money, and she was a stay-at-home mom for most of the time. Well, almost the whole time I was growing up. She didn't start working until I was in college, but she would do all these resourceful things like bake bread and different things, find ways to sell things. And I'm looking, and it's like, man, we really are the benefactors, like this generation, of the hard work of our parents and their parents and so on, to kind of pave the way for us to have more options, to really do what we love and be compensated for it, if that's our choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's you can take what you learn and decide, is this the way I want to live, or can I tweak it at all? And at that time, I remember being scared of the change, because really, even though I didn't quite like what I was doing, at least I knew the paperwork and I understood it. And, it can take years to figure that stuff out in a new job. So I looked at other positions. I started doing counseling at my church on the nights and weekends. But I honestly, I couldn't make the leap because I didn't quite know it would be better. So needless to say, I got introduced to a home-based business in 2007, and my friend's dad is actually the CEO, and we met her through our small group at church and things like that. And so we were able to get started in a side business, a digital marketing business, and grow that without the huge leap of just quitting my job and trying something new. And I'm so grateful that we did, because we didn't have any experience in this necessarily, but we knew that we weren't where we wanted to be. And so we were open to trying something different.
It kind of reminds me of that saying, well, when, you ask somebody, well, what do you want to do? And usually the first thing is like, well, I know what I don't want. I know what I don't want to do anymore. And I think that can be a really powerful place to start, don't you? Like you're just talking about taking the leap. Like you just jumped in because you didn't like what you were feeling in that other space.
Yeah. I knew that I didn't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I really wanted because I honestly didn't quite know what was out there. I had never done, I say I graduated as a really hard worker, but not necessarily a leadership thinker. And so I had never wanted to start my own business before. So I had no idea what was possible. I just knew I didn't want to be here anymore. And what I found as we grew our business, and my husband is a digital marketer, and so he grew that side of the business and we could do things together, was that I was able to impact more people within this new venue than I really could at my regular job. And that's when I say it went from my head to my heart. It went from a good idea to like what I was meant to do. And things just really started to quadruple at that point.
Well, it flows. It's like
anymore,
if you're doing what you love, it like flows, right? You and I share that in common. We both started in the clinical psychology realm and then decided we could have a greater impact by kind of going out of the box a little bit to help people. When you kind of made that, like what did you notice specifically was more helpful for them in your new domain versus the clinical space? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
what would you say was really different for you?
Well, I was first working with people that wanted help.
That makes a difference. Totally. Yeah. Like if they have that motivation. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in my clinical psychology job, I absolutely had clients that I loved. And there were some kids I saw from ages 14 to 18, and they were the first to graduate from high school and their family. And there were some cool stories, but a lot of people were there because they had to be. And so in my business, I was working with people who wanted to join and wanted to make extra money. And I felt like I had a roadmap to help them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what did you notice for, like, what was the shift in your energy with, you talked about a spark, like, do you let that spark die and just keep going through the motions, or do you let a new spark in a new space? Like, how quick was that for you? Like, when did you, because I know when you start a new business, and this is where I see when I mentor women in their soul or business path, initially they feel like they need to go and do something different. And at first it feels great. And then real life sets in, and then all of their personal blocks kind of show up, and they're like right in their face. And there is a tendency to be like, oh, well, maybe it wasn't the right thing. Maybe I should have stayed safe over here. Did you notice that for like how to break through that yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it was like, all right, well, I'll give this thing a try. And the beautiful thing about a digital business is you can do it on nights and weekends. So I didn't have to do a full-blown quit my job kind of deal. But I still had a lot of confidence to gain. I often say I started my business on a confidence level at a 4. And so I had a lot of growth to do. And I think the two main things that flipped for me that really made a game changer in my entrepreneurial journey was when I realized that I could do this. Like, I'm good at this. Because often people would say, they tell me their success story and I would say, good for you. Mm-hmm. But when I really realized that I could do this with the skills that I already had, I didn't have to go back to school for business. I didn't have to learn all the marketing strategies. I didn't have to, I could really just sit with people and say, what do you want? And how can I help you, and support them on their journey? And so that flip of the switch was for me when I realized I could use my gifts and skills within my team.
Yeah.
And I could do this. And that took a couple years because I had to get my feet wet with what is this thing? How does it work? How do I do it? And then actually generate a team to feel like that my gifts and skills could help them.
Sure. Yeah. And it's about being persistent and showing up, right? I really think that's a huge component to being successful at anything, is just that persistence and consistency. And I also love, I know you and I both have done a little bit of work with the John Maxwell leadership kind of stuff. And for those who are not familiar with that, do you want to explain what that's about, the John Maxwell Institute?
Yeah. Well, John Maxwell is one of the top Christian leadership authors and speakers, I would say, that I know of.
He's amazing.
He really crosses faith and people focus with business and leadership and really how to help your team win. And so I read all of his books and then got the opportunity to work with them, which really just meant a 4-day weekend with John and his team and a bunch of other direct selling leaders. And it was a really powerful collaborative experience. So I don't know what you did, but mine was calls and training and then a live weekend.
Well, I just did a mastermind with women from all different businesses, and we just put our heads together in our respective spheres of female leadership, because we all owned businesses. And the theme was about asking good questions. Good leaders ask great questions. So the reason it was so powerful for me is I understood the process of inquiry, which the best leaders in history always help you reflect and go inside. Like Jesus, for example, you brought up John Maxwell is a great Christian leader, and he really empowers people from that spiritual, kind of more of a spiritual standpoint. But for me, it was a big aha. It's like, oh my gosh, when I really look at the life of Christ, it was a lot of him teaching in parables and helping people, like as a servant leader, helping people go within and say, well, what do you think about this? And have you considered this? And so just the power of asking great questions. So I loved just meeting with these other women from all over the country, and we would get on Zoom and we would just once a week for, I think, like 3 months, we would guide that for ourselves. And I used it in my coaching practice, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And with my kids. So anyway, that's my exposure to the John Maxwell process.
Yeah. One of his, he's got a plethora of classics for a reason. So I'd say if you need any support in leadership, definitely find any of his books, because what I was able to do is learn. I feel like one of my successes was to learn and teach. So I was constantly reading and then constantly teaching that within my team and helping them to grow too.
Oh, I love it. I noticed a big shift in the way that we went about things and experienced our own measure of success when applying that. Okay, so let's dive a little bit into this thing about alignment over achievement. Do you want to kind of explain your expertise around this?
Yeah, well,
this idea.
Absolutely. It really, it connects with what we have just said, in a sense. When you're out of alignment and you're going through the motions, you become a zombie living for the weekends, kind of a shell, right? Your body's going through the steps, but you aren't really there. And that doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel good. And what I found is when I really got clear on what my life purpose was, what I really naturally bring to the table, and how I could offer that to the people around me, my community, my team, and use my gifts within my organization, I found that I was in what we call alignment. Now, alignment is when I teach the Dream Life Pathway in my program.
So cool. And so I love it. You were explaining a little bit to me before, and I love it.
The Dream Life Pathway is the head, heart, feet approach to living your dreams. And when you're in alignment, right, your head, heart, and feet are in alignment, meaning they're all going towards the same goal, magic starts to happen. And so head is what do you really want? Clarity. This is mindset. Are you thinking about what you really want? Are you focusing on what you really want? Are you taking those negative thoughts captive? And are you retraining your brain to see what you want show up in your life? So head is all about clarity and mindset. And then heart is all about purpose and belief. So when what you want, i.e. growing your business, building your coaching programs, promoting, whatever it is, when what you want is connected to your life purpose and you're emotionally connected to it and you believe that this is what you're here for, 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4 anymore. The game's over. You've already won because you know that this is where you're supposed to be. So you could have a no in your business and it becomes more of a speed bump than a stop sign. And you really just have that perseverance that you talked about before because you know what you want and you know why you want it.
Yes.
And then feet is all about action. So people often, when we hit the top of our company, would say, tell me your secrets. What's your secret?
Yeah.
And I would say, this is not something I can just message you. It's not a script. It's truly taking that action in alignment, taking bold action, consistent action, but with that high belief. And so in my programs and in my book, I really teach people and help them walk through those things because sometimes we don't know what we want and we've got to really ask ourselves some clarifying questions. And sometimes we got to build our belief because we might say we want something, but in the back of our head, we're saying, yeah, right.
Yeah. On the subconscious level, because 90% of our behavior is driven by the subconscious. In our head, we may be like, yeah, I want this, but the rest of us needs convinced because we have so many beliefs built up around receiving that.
Absolutely. And we may even need to have some forgiveness that we need to offer someone or ourselves. I find if your emotions are 3 steps behind, then we can't dream 3 steps ahead because we're emotionally tethered. So we may have some forgiveness or healing that needs to happen. And then sometimes we need to learn some skills. Sure. We say, I want to promote in my business, but I don't know how to generate leads. So sometimes we need to learn some skills and just Google, all right, how do I do a Facebook ad or how do I book a party or whatever the case may be. And so we get to work and level up in all of those areas.
Yeah. And we kind of teach something in my business, mindset, skill set, tool set. It's very similar to what you're teaching here about the mindset and the belief. And I think the tool part is where you do move to action. You actually have to use the resources. You can't just think about it and build your belief and, ruminate and build your, get your momentum going in your soul. You actually have to do something about it, and that, for me, I teach a lot about the masculine and feminine dynamic within each person. And so when you're talking about the heart, that's more of the feminine, like you're being led, you're intuitive with it. You've crossed into that belief space where it's just, you're feeling it. And then really the masculine part is where you put your feet on the ground and you actually do it. Like you move you move into what your heart is calling you to do. And I teach also this thing on the 3 brains, the mind, the heart, and the gut. So it's very similar to what, the 3 things there's more to you than just your thoughts, right? There's more to you than just, and you start going through the motions. So if your heart's not in it and your head isn't convinced, you literally are a zombie, right?
Well, exactly. Your soul's not engaged with what you're doing. And so you truly are just going through the motions.
So what have you found was for you kind of like the catalyst to move as you work with people in your business and as you went on this thing, the dream life pathway, what keeps people going with that? How, is it, because we all wax and wane at different seasons of our life. And when you're talking about this alignment part, why is alignment more important than the achievement? So it's kind of a dual question. Like, how do you keep going with that, right? And not get into this overachiever mode? How do you stay in that space where you are in your heart and your mindset's clear? Like how do you stay in that alignment?
Yeah, good question. Because you can imagine someone who's taking action and is having success. And maybe they're taking bold, massive action. Maybe they're super busy and they've got clients, coming out of the woodwork. Their schedule is full of Zooms, but their heart's not in it. And again, they could be having success and achievement and taking action, but they're still kind of like I was, not really in it. And I think that when you find something you really love, then it doesn't feel like work. And you could do it all day long because you're having so much fun and you find that it actually fills you up. And you're living your dream. You're like loving your life. That's the whole goal. And so no matter what that dream is for you, when you're emotionally connected to it, like, woo, let's go. And I think you can have all the achievement, all of the success, all of the action and be super busy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you love it and that you're connected to your heart, and then something's missing.
Mm. And I have the belief that everyone on the earth right now is perfectly positioned to share their passion to help heal this mess around us. I know you mentioned to me when we first got on, before we started recording, that you guys went back into lockdown. You're in Michigan, right?
Yes.
So what, we're still in like the orange zone here in Utah. Masks are mandated. We're also being asked to like not go anywhere over Thanksgiving or anything, just hunker down. And I've seen varying levels of how people are playing that out. But let's talk about COVID for a second. It's really easy to go out of alignment when you're in fear of the unknown. And I think it's forced us to come back. Like, we can't do the same things. We can't achieve in the quote unquote achieve in the same ways we were before. Things have to be different. What have you noticed for yourself, your business, your life with this 2020 fiasco that we've had to deal with?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. If I'm being honest, it has been distracting for me. My boys are home. So homeschool for the first little bit, virtual school, then summer, right? And now we did choose to keep them home from school because they go to a private school, which is, we love our school, but we were like, we don't want to pay for e-learning and we don't trust our governor. So we are coming home. And so it's been distracting in a sense of, all right, now I need to figure out how I'm going to prioritize all of my priorities. And kind of get back to my time management skills in order to make sure that everything has a place in my calendar. But it is hard to live in the world of dreams when you're living in the world of drama. And as much as I can stay in alignment myself, the world around me is in a bit of chaos. And I think that this is when we get to make those choices too. Are we going to join that world, or are we going to do our best to stay focused on what we can control? Sure. And the beautiful thing is there's a lot of ways to make money, and we do work from home already. So it's just a matter of actually getting creative, putting pen to paper, taking action, and then finding a community that we can hang out with while we're here. My business before, I was traveling once or twice a month for years.
That was me too.
Yeah. So it's really put a stop to a lot of those typical actions. So we've had to figure that out here at home. But then also, I think part of the strategy is to find that core group of people. So we have about 4 families that we've been hanging out with, and the boys and I will do extra stuff with. And having that community, we actually learned a new skill this summer. We learned canning.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So one of them was an expert in canning. And so we would get together a couple times a month and can all day and learn this new skill. And so those are the types of things that I had to do to keep myself uplifted and sane, and really focusing on what I can control, because there's so much out there that we just can't.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you one more question, because I know this is something unique that you dove into, the connection between neuroscience and scripture. Do you want to elaborate? I think that's freaking cool.
Absolutely. What I love as you dive into neuroscience and quantum physics and some of these epigenetics types of experiences. Epigenetics is when you can turn your genes on and off, right? We're not predispositioned. We can impact what genes are active and that kind of thing, and our cells rejuvenate. Even when you're 70, you can heal from the inside out. Neuroplasticity means that you can retrain your brain to have new thought habits that take you in a new direction. And when you start going down this rabbit trail and learning about all of these cool, just the power we all have in our own mind and our own body and our own spirit, I started realizing, holy smokes, Jesus taught this whole time. And, he talked about the power in the tongue and taking your thoughts captive. And I started reading the Bible in a new way, and things started jumping out at me, where it wasn't just him telling me what to do, but it was him giving me permission, as you said earlier, to step into my own power and to step into my own purpose. And it's pretty cool when you start lining that stuff up.
Yeah. One of the things that there's a scripture that came to me really early in my business, and it's in the Old Testament. When there is no vision, the people perish. I think it's in Proverbs. And also the whole, I want to say maybe it's also in Proverbs about a virtuous woman. I used to be really triggered by that because it seemed like old school, but, or old way of looking at women. But when I really read it, it's like, she's in business, like she's selling stuff, like she's, literally like describes this powerful woman who I think is a composite of like the perfect woman that no one can ever be. But at the same time, I felt like it was my divine go ahead to stay in that alignment that you speak of and really just go and be who I was created to be. I love business. I love the idea of women having influence and being a mother. Yes, totally calls to my heart. No one loves being a mother more than me, at least according to me. But at the same time, like I have this other these other aspects to how I need to express and create in life. So I just wanted to insert that, Jesus and, all of the stuff he did with women in the New Testament, of course, but then there's also this rich stuff in the Old Testament that I totally looked past. What's your favorite, if you had to like pick a favorite scripture, what would it be?
Ooh, one of my favorites is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, which says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take." And I think I love that because so many times in my life I've said, what do I do next? I don't know what to do. And I felt stuck, or I felt wishy-washy, or I had self-doubt, and I would take a step and then I'd second guess it. And I would be like in this waffling space for years. And the root of stepping into your purpose is asking for it and then trusting it. And so when you take that step, you do it in faith. You take that step and you do it with that full trust. And that's where the heart comes in, when you know that you know that you know. And it can take some time to get there, but I think it's powerful when you do.
And I love the idea of when you're talking about the head, the heart, and the feet, there's so many references in scripture to being God's hands, being, his feet, and how we're all kind of the body of Christ to a degree. Like we move for and in behalf of that force to help lift others. And I know you would agree with this. Like, our purpose really isn't about us. It's about the people that we're meant to serve. And sometimes the hardest part is just getting out of your own way.
Oh, I think that's almost always.
Yeah.
Because you're right. I mean, when we're in our purpose, we're overflowing and impacting so many people around us. And the way that we can tap into that often is taking a look at those around us and saying, how can I make life better here? And again, it's so fun when you find it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It doesn't feel like work.
Right. I mean, you really could. I mean, that's why they say entrepreneurs can be obsessed, right? That word obsessed. And it's true because you are so in it. You're in it. You're not a zombie when you are in alignment. You are in it and you're so excited. That doesn't mean you're working 24 hours, 7 days a week, but it just means you're like full blown in it and you've jumped in the pool and you are, and you're
swimming in it.
You're going for it. And I think that's a powerful place because again, when you're whatever type of business you're growing, if you are wishy-washy asking people to be a part of it, maybe kind of, sort of, do you want to join my program? Do you want coaching? Do you want to buy my product? They're going to feel that energy. But if you're like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing since sliced bread, you are going to love it. I know this is going to help you. More people will respond to that. And so the energy of the action is really one. I mean, I always say we be before we do. When you be before you do, when you have that alignment, you're going to get far better results.
I love that. Be before you do. Have you heard the have, do, be versus be, do, have? It's kind of that same thing. Like we are trained to think if I have this and I do this, then I will be this way. Like if I have this perfect, relationship, or if I have, if I'm super fit or whatever, right? And that'll help me do this. And so I can be happy. But actually, if we flip it and we be what we're seeking, and if we focus on our being, our state of being, then we will naturally do what is needed to move us into having what we actually desire. And oh gosh, I feel like we could just keep going with this whole alignment piece, because it really is everything, don't you think? Just that staying connected, staying in alignment.
Absolutely.
It's a platform for, or a foundation, I guess, for everything. Denise, where can people find you?
Well, I have a freebie for you guys if you are interested. I know for me during this whole COVID thing, it threw me for a loop. To be honest, it just did. And so I knew that if it threw me for a loop, and then it may have thrown other people for a loop, and we may need some support. And so what I created was a dream board kit. So what this means, and it's great timing right now for the end of 2020 and into 2021, is a dream board kit. So it comes with a lot of different questions. So the first few pages are asking you questions like to answer yourself, what do I really want? What do I want next? What would my dream life look like in all of these different areas? And it gives you space to brainstorm. And then I help you identify which one you want to work on first and set that goal. And then I actually have a ton of different pictures and words that you can print off to put on your dream board. And you can get that at dreamworkbook.com/dreamboardkit.
dreamworkbook.com/dreamkit.
Dream board kit.
Oh, dream board kit. Perfect. I will put that in the show notes as well. And it was a pleasure talking with you, Denise. I love your energy, and you're just so inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. It's been fun.
As you're looking at filling up your own cup, I know you hear that metaphor a lot, but it's a real thing. Like you need to give from the overflow, not the leftovers, right? Like you're already filled up as best as you can. And sometimes that's just about deep breathing. Sometimes that's just about conscious thoughts. Sometimes that's about giving yourself gratitude and radical self-compassion. But whatever it takes to fill you up physically, emotionally, and spiritually, then you can be social. Then you can give from that overflow and naturally bring to the table what feels aligned for you and what's flowing and what feels right rather than forcing. So I just love this whole idea of alignment over achievement. Don't forget to visit our Women Seeking Wholeness Facebook group. Ask to join that. And also remember to pick up Denise's free offer where you can find her dream kit offer there in the show notes. Have an absolutely beautiful week, and we'll talk to you next time on Women Seeking Wholeness.